want no drama, I don't want no hate. I'm just trying to make sure all my people straight. I'm just trying to give you everything I am.
All right, and welcome to episode 16 of the Where Were We Again podcast. You know, that podcast where, we just get doing in a conversation and sometimes you stop and say, hey, wait a second, where were we again? You get it. That's the name. So anyways, I'm going to get straight to it, right? This is something I've been really excited to do for a long time, and I can't believe it's finally here. So I've got the opportunity. I got Andrew Schwab of Project 86, or as it should be properly known, P86 Omni. Right. We'll talk about that in the future. But thank you for coming on. I am super excited that you're here. Man, you have had the craziest, busiest, at this point, 4 years.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
And it just
leading
keeps
into
going.
This.
It does. Keeps going.
It does. I'm super
Thanks
excited.
for having me on, man. I know it's been a long time in coming, and I've been very difficult to pin down, and I appreciate you for just hanging in there with me.
Oh, no worries. So let's talk about the last 4 years. So at some point in 2019, 2020, you said, you know what? It's time to wind this thing down. And Project 86 has had a great life, but I want to go off with a big bang. And I want to do it right.
That's correct.
It things have changed a bit in that perspective, but how did you get on this journey to go Omni? I don't want to worry about too much digging too deep in the Omni, how the story, how you got to Omni, because there's plenty of other content talking about this out on podcast and all that. But just as a kind of refresher on how we got to where we are today from leading into Omni.
Yeah, I always imagined making a big to-do about the end of Project 86. I didn't know when. I've always approached every record like it could potentially be the last. Sure. Some of the more recent titles, specifically Knives to the Future, believe it or not, I really thought it was the last transmission. And then some things happened in life, and it led me back to Sheep Among Wolves. Some outside forces kind of almost talked me into it. That's a different story. But I always imagined being very intentional about announcing the end of the thing and making it a big to-do, a big send-off. Now, throughout the process of doing this most recent double album, everything sort of shifted under my feet, and I came to a new resolution inside of it. And I suppose I should mention this. There were two real motivations for me to announce, hey, this is the final chapter. The first one was feeling creatively stuck, meaning every time you sit down to write a new piece of music, 10 albums into it, it becomes increasingly difficult to do something you've never done before. You sit down to write a song, guitar player is like, no, we did that riff on album 5. No, we did that riff on album 7. We did that riff on album 2, And so it becomes increasingly difficult to not tread over paths that you've already walked, so to speak. So I knew to do another record, it was going to require all of my creative energy and then some, as well as others. The other thing was I had been carrying with me a vocal cord injury for over 2 decades that I really felt as time went on was putting me in a position where I couldn't do what I do anymore. The Schwab shout that everybody knows hurts, and it causes issues and has always caused issues, although it caused me more when I was younger. I had a pretty long period of time where the problems were fairly dormant. They resurfaced back around the time we were doing the 20th anniversary tour surrounding Sheep Among Wolves. So I knew if I were to go down this road again, it was probably going to be it. Getting older, your voice changes as you get older. And for me, because I've had such a difficult time along the way doing what I do, I was like, okay, this has to be it, just from an age, physical standpoint. So those were the two big motivations going into it. Now, do you want to talk what changed along the way?
Yeah, no, please do.
So as I got into it, a couple of things happened. One, I made some new relationships and brought in some new people to work with on the production side of things. That completely revolutionized the music, I also made a decision to, I don't know how to describe this, not be afraid anymore to put my foot down about what I wanted. And in so doing, I realized that every album, every piece of music that I've put out, really since Drawing Black Lines, has been a compromise in one way or another between my vision and the other people who were a part of the creative process. Well, I said, screw it. I'm not going to compromise anymore, for better or worse. This might really frustrate the people I work with. This might mean that I have to do everything by myself. But whatever it takes, whether it's learning recording programs and getting out a guitar myself, or working with people that aligned with the vision that I needed to clearly articulate, I was going to make the album and the music that I wanted to make without letting it be adulterated, for better or worse, by anyone else.
Right.
Well, that was a huge leap of faith because I had never really approached things that way. Luckily, as I was able to flesh out what it was I really wanted to say and do, it resonated with the guys that I was building new relationships with. Speaking Matt Putman and Corey and Grayson and Beau and George and all these other people, Darren included, who plays in Project 86, P86. So once the creative floodgates were open, I knew I was onto something. And that included a vision for Omni, which is this totally different thought than Project 86. I've hinted at some of this along the way, especially with Truthless Heroes, but I was going full on cyberpunk, sci-fi, dystopian, all of those things, leaning into that and actually building a world, which is what I've always wanted to do, alongside making much heavier, more aggressive music. Well, that ties into the voice stuff. When it came down to recording a new piece of music for Omni, which was Omni Part 1, after we had finished the music, which did end up being much more aggressive.
Yeah.
I ended up coming down with COVID, and as I was coming out of it, I was in my car cranking the sound system and singing along. It's funny, the album I was singing along to was Homogenic by Bjork, which is a really high register, believe it or not. And as I was doing that and belting it out in my car, I felt something kind of break in my throat. And it really felt like what I had experienced when I originally injured my voice and developed a vocal cord nodule while recording, while in the studio working on Truthless Heroes. Felt the same. And that was kind of the fear that I had been living with for a couple of decades. It's this idea or concept, if you're unfamiliar with vocal cord trauma, which most people are, unless you've gone through it. If you develop a vocal cord nodule, you have a callus on your vocal cords that looks like a little bump, and it impedes your vocal cords from coming together and making sound if it gets too pronounced. Well, I had been carrying one of those with me over the years, and the warning from all the experts, the vocal coaches, voice coaches, and doctors and speech therapists I had been seeing earlier in my career regarding this was, if you push it too much, you're going to get a second one. If you get a second one, you're not going to have a middle section of your range at all, and then you will force yourself to have surgery. It's the only option, really.
Sure.
And I was actually scheduled for surgery in 2002 and canceled it, and basically said, kind of in an insane fashion, I'm not going to deal with any of these people anymore. No more voice coaches, no more doctors, none of it, because my problems all kind of started when I got involved with all that stuff. Actually, I was just writing about this in the I Need Truth book today, finishing up the edit on that.
Oh, beautiful.
So it's like fresh on my mind. But I'd been carrying with me this sort of unknown fear because I never went to another doctor again. So I didn't know what happened with my voice during those following 2 decades. Well, when I got COVID in 2021, right before I needed to go into the studio and sing for Omni Part 1 with producer Beau Burchell, I had a problem because I blew my voice out. It hurt. It felt like I developed a second nodule. I put myself on voice rest, which is what you were supposed to do when you lose your voice. And I remained on voice rest for almost 6 weeks, and my voice didn't return. Nothing good happened. All the other times throughout my career, after blowing my voice out at a show or on a tour or in the studio, I would put myself on voice rest and my voice would come back and be the same. This time, that didn't happen. So after exhausting all the things that I knew to do, I had to go to the doctor. And when I went to the voice doctor, I had built myself up for bad news, basically. I'd prepared myself and accepted the fact she's probably going to tell me that I can't sing anymore. At least that's the thing that's going through your mind. And every singer is paranoid, in case you don't know. Really, really paranoid about, hurting our voices, because it's a fragile thing. If you don't get enough rest, you don't eat the right foods, you deal with any kind of health issues, you have problems with your voice, and then the thing that pops up in your brain is that, oh, I'm going to lose my voice forever, So that's what I've been carrying with me for many, many years. So I went to the doctor that day, totally prepared to get bad news, the ultimate bad news, the worst fear of my life. I'm going to lose my career, right? And so I go in, and what they do is they take a scope that's on the end of a tube, and they put it up your nose, and it goes down all the way back in your throat. And there's a camera on the end of that scope that shows on a screen next to you for the doctor what's going on. So I had my eyes closed, and I knew the deal because I'd been to those types of doctors many times over the years. And she's like, all right, take a look. And it was like really dramatic because I had my eyes closed and I opened one eye at a time, and then I opened the other one and take a look. She goes, yeah, your vocal cords look normal. I said, well, what do you mean? I have a nodule. She's like, no, whatever you had there has gone away over the years. And all you have is swelling in your throat, little residual from having COVID. And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready. Of all the answers and information I was preparing myself to receive, that was the only one and only scenario I did not anticipate. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of shock after that. She's like, yeah, okay, you're good. You're good to go. Come back, buy some nasal spray. Here's what you should get at the drugstore. It'll help take the swelling out of your throat, and then you should be good to go in the studio. I walked out in the street, like, I don't know if you've ever seen Fight Club, but there's a scene. I always reference this when I talk about how I felt at that moment. There's a scene where Brad Pitt approaches this guy. I believe he owns a 7-Eleven or a liquor store or something, and he holds a gun to his head. And he tells the guy, you're about to die, and then he takes his driver's license and he lets him go. And Ed Norton says to him, what are you doing, dude? Are you insane? He's like, that guy's about to have the best day of his life tomorrow. I just did him a favor. And now everything that he does from this moment forward, he's going to be thankful for in a brand new way. And that's how I felt walking out of the doctor's office. Like I'd been given my life back after it had been taken away from me.
Right.
And so, I always say that if I was in a film at that point, the camera would have spun around me in 360 degrees. I'm walking out on the street on the sidewalk, almost forgetting where I parked, not knowing what to do with this newfound life that I'd been given back. And you have to understand, I've been carrying a bag full of rocks with me for 20 years. And they had finally been taken from me. And when you carry a bag of rocks with you for 20 years and it's suddenly taken from you, it's a very foreign feeling. As good as it is, you have to adjust your mentality, your perspective, your entire attitude and outlook on life.
Right.
So
sure.
So that happened about a week before I started in the studio with Beau Burchell. We'll fast forward to this. This is all tied together. I go into the studio knowing that we're making a different type of music. It's going to be more metal influenced, and the way I'm going to sing is going to be different than I always have. And so I go in and we start working. And at the beginning of the first day, I'm doing typical Schwab things, talking, whispering, shouting, all of the things that people are familiar with from the other 10 Project 86 records that I've made. And then we get to the end of the song, and the song is Apotheosis. It's the first song I recorded, and it's track 1 on Omni. And then I go into that death. People call it more of a metalcore sound, which I don't know, maybe. I mean,
it's heavy. That's what matters.
The sound that comes out, that I make when I sing that way. And to be honest, I've been doing that type of singing more and more over the years, since about 2010 or 11, because when I sing that way, I don't have to push as hard. It's easier on my voice to sing that way. So I've been doing it in the live setting more and more and more, especially when I'm feeling fatigued. Why I've never done it up until recently is really because we've never had the music to warrant it. We've always been this sort of hard rock, post-hardcore thing, especially since Drawing Black Lines. It's never been heavy enough to warrant singing that way. Well, this time I intentionally steered the music that way to be able to sing that way. So as I was tracking the ending of Apotheosis, Beau turned to me, the producer, and he said, "Dude, what is that?" I said, "Oh, it's something new that I've been kind of working on for a while that I really want to lean into on this record." He's like, "You sound way better singing that way than you ever have your entire life." So I reached the end of the session, and I didn't lose my voice. And I always lose my voice in the studio from doing the Schwab yell.
Right.
And just sounds obvious, but a switch flipped and a light bulb went on, because as much as sometimes I'm good at using multi-syllable words, I'm really not very smart. I don't learn lessons very quickly. The light bulb goes on, and I said, holy crap. I just figured it out. 25 some years into this thing, I just figured it out. I just figured out how I'm supposed to be singing. I just figured out the style of music that I'm supposed to be playing. And so you just imagine, again, the backpack full of rocks, and you're just taking that weight off. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I've already gone through this breakthrough with the music. I've already gone through this breakthrough with this fear, the voice thing, the medical issue I've been carrying with me. And now I have this breakthrough in the studio, and I'm doing the commute home that evening, and I'm going, what is happening right now? Well, the next day we recorded Metropolis, which was like, if the dam was already cracked and there's a lot of water coming through it, but it's still intact, that was the moment for me as a creative person and as just me, that the dam broke. And you have to imagine, I've been fighting to try to make heavier music and just sort of missing the mark for 8 albums, right?
Right.
And not that I'm disappointed in those albums. There's a lot of good songs on those albums.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
But I was always missing the mark of the thing I wanted to be doing. I could never quite put my finger on why or how or what it needed to be. And here it was in this one song, Metropolis, expressed. And I had a 1-hour drive to and from the studio every day. I live in South Orange County, Southern California. And Beau and his studio is in Temecula. So it's an hour from where I live. Well, each day when I finished, he would give me a rough mix, and I would listen to it the entire way home. So on the way home that night, listening to Metropolis, I'm singing along. I'm shouting. I'm just like over and over and over again. I'm like, if you could see the look on my face, I'm so ecstatic. And I actually put this in the book that I'm writing. Like, I know there are hundreds of people that commute home from Temecula or commute somewhere else from Temecula on that, I believe it's the 15 freeway that I was driving on, that know of a guy with a bald head and a short beard who drives a Jeep who is a crazy person, because he sings really, really aggressively in his car with a huge smile on his face, looking like a clown weirdo. I know that there are hundreds of people out there in the world that think that, because I couldn't hold back the joy. The joy was so real and visceral and raw and authentic. And so you know, not there are not very many people out there that know these stories very well at this point. And after I'm finished, all I need to finish with the Omni album cycle in terms of fulfillment and the books and the audiobooks and everything, and everybody's happy and everybody's done, I'm going to tell this story on Facebook Live and Instagram Live, and I'm going to put it out there in the universe because it's going to be my means to announce Project 86 died on album 10 with Sheep Among Wolves. P86 Omni started with this double album. It's a new thought, a new expression. It's a completely different road I'm on creatively and as a human being, to the core of my being, that is tied to current events, but also connecting the dots between a lot of the sci-fi and futurism that I've consumed over the years that's influenced me directly and indirectly, as well as a lot of pieces of the theoretical puzzle that are expressed in the book of Revelation.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it's all sort of wrapped up in this, and current events and all of it. And it really feels non-coincidental, you know?
Yeah.
And I keep making this statement again. I don't mean to hype it too much, but it's my world right now. This book that I'm writing, I keep bringing it back to this one lyric that I wrote on the very first song of the very first Project 86 record that a lot of people know, especially if you've been following the band since then. There is no coincidence. There is no compromise. And I start the book where I mention this lyric early in the book, and then I bring it back to that at the end of the book, because I cannot come to but any other conclusion that all of these things are lining up for a reason. I don't know all of it. You know, it's very convenient. You know, I'm a Christian person and God is hands on everything. Of course, we all want to say that and think that and believe that. But I have objective data and experience here to show, look, I don't know what your life is like, but this is how mine has gone. And these are the conclusions I have to keep coming to about it at every step of the way. That's it.
No, yeah, absolutely. So, and I'll tell you this. So, I want to make sure people know how to get a hold of this book when it's come out. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Sure.
But I mean, so, and on spoiler alert for those who are listening, if you guys didn't know, I've been a huge fan of everything Andrew's been doing for a very long time, and I've got a story to tell you in a minute about that I think you'll find quite hilarious. But it's just been amazing to watch all of this, and I truly will say this. I think like the Omni really is just probably when it's by far, yes, I did your best work. All your previous work is fantastic. That's the reason I've been a fan for so long. However, this really is something new and something different, and from multiple layers, right? Because musically it's great, but too, like, you're exploring so many new avenues, not just musically, but you didn't really mention much of this yet, but there's two books here. You said two books. There's two books. There's a fictional book that's going along with the record that's going to tell the story, right?
Yeah, and I made the absolutely foolish decision to write them both at the same time. So what that means is they both are taking much longer than I want them to finish. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good, right? So, yes, being a longtime fan, that also means I've been a part of this Patreon from day one. So I kind of know all the secrets and all the cool things that he lets me in on. I'm not telling you guys any of it.
Oh, good.
Go join the Patreon, man. Like, dude, it's not expensive. You can support up to a high level, and please do, but like, go join this thing, and you too can know what there is to know. It's cool. It's great. Trust me. But I've heard bits and pieces. I've heard rough drafts, and I'm really excited because, one, the storybook is absolutely amazing, right? You've read a couple of stories from the second draft, and I love it, right? It's you get to tell the story and take us through the journey of how we got here, and you are leading us through that. Like, hey, this is not a coincidence. There's purpose behind this, and where it's going is going to be amazing, right? But also the fictional book, man, I just have to detour to that for a second because I am really excited for Omni's story because I love what the album tells, and it's interesting, right? Because the album itself, Omni, like, you've literally taken the words of some really crazy, powerful people and wrote the music off of that.
Kind of, yeah.
Trust
And
the science.
Thank you, by the way. Thank you. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a little. I mean, obviously, the pandemic was a
For sure.
huge source of quote inspiration for me, because it seemed like we were living through Stephen King's The Stand or something. You know,
Right. Oh my gosh.
It's very easy to take the inferential leap into sci-fi futurism and dystopia while we were all locked down inside this quote pandemic.
Yeah.
So it all kind of started from there. But the subsequent sort of media narrative and politicization of many of the things surrounding it was where I really started to go, And it's very similar to the Truthless Heroes era in the sense that I had this whole idea for an album, going on, and then 9/11 happened. And the aftermath of 9/11 was the emergence, maybe the subtle emergence, but the emergence nonetheless, of a surveillance state that's never gone away, and the subsequent propaganda and the warmongering, and there was a lot going on politically and in the media surrounding 9/11. So this was, in my opinion, the biggest cultural event, negative cultural event at least, since 9/11 was the pandemic, the most world-changing event and culture-shifting event. And we're still barely touching on all of the ramifications of it here now,
for sure.
several years later. And we're going to see we're going to see the reverberations of it echo into this election cycle and beyond. And depending upon what happens with the election cycle, we're going to see a lot of other things come to fruition in the world. So this is all the catalyst of what I'm working on with Omni, basically.
Yeah. No, but just to that point, right? Like, it's all really great material, and the album was great, and I just want to dig deeper into that story. And I really do truly hope, I know you've kind of teased this through some of the podcast and Patreon stuff. Okay, I linked a little there, but no, I mean, you've teased like maybe you would do more fictional stories, and I would love to see it, right? Because I what you've written has been really interesting and engaging for me. And so I'm really excited to actually put that whole story together and read the whole thing through as you've got it as a final draft. I'm excited for that, and just can't wait. So that's something to look forward to. So
yeah, I'll give you the premise too. Since we're talking about it, I should probably illuminate that. And again, to be clear, I'm writing one book that's kind of like an autobiographical journey through my music career. You know,
sure,
it has a lot. You know, I build it as a history of Project 86. It is, but it's through my eyes, so it's not. The problem is, you know, I was not the only member of Project 86 along the way. I'm the founding member. I'm the one who started the band. I'm the one who's led the thing. But there are other people's perspectives along the way that I don't want to speak for. So I make it very clear at the top of the book, like, look, this is an autobiography about my musical journey. Yes, that focuses on Project 86 as well. But you're getting my perspective on certain events. Certain events only happened to me and through me. Certain other events that happened inside the band did not happen through me or to me. So you're getting my music career with an emphasis on Project 86. The Omni book is a piece of fiction. It's a novel using the lyrics to Omni Part 1 as a catalyst to tell a story. And it is directly tied to the lyrics and also indirectly tied to the lyrics. There's a lot more story to be had that's not contained specifically in the lyrics. There are some differences to the perspective in terms of the fact that the songs are written from multiple different perspectives. The story, the book, the piece of fiction is written through the eyes of one specific character. So there are some differences there, but it is a work of fiction revolving around a world not too far in the future, 2041, where a big tech company becomes technocracy or one world government and invents a piece of software or an application that offers the population of the world eternal life. And so it's an exploration of what might happen if that were to ever occur. Specifically, it's a look at the true nature of humanity without the boundary of consequence. So, and it's a look at, how technology could influence the world towards that. And if there's a word that I would use from the philosophical realm to describe what I'm trying to explore in it, it's transhumanism. So,
yeah,
there we go.
No, good. I love it. It's a good synopsis without giving away anything. I love it. So I'm going to transition a little bit on this because I want to talk about some of like the Patreon stuff, but I'm going to do it in a way that I'm going to talk about how I got to that point anyways. So like I had mentioned, I've been a fan for a very long time, and
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. No, so this is fun. I think you'll find this humorous, but I've been a fan for a very long time. A friend of mine gave me an album, an early album, and they said, "Here, check this out. This is good stuff." And I loved it. Problem being, my parents didn't quite understand what they were looking at when they found it. And It was awesome. So I was handed Songs to Burn Your Bridges By.
Okay.
First and foremost, the first thing that they reacted to was just the cover. They're like, what is this?
I'll bet.
This is violent. And then they flip over the lyric book. And of course, by nature, they land on the very first song.
Mm-hmm.
We caught you plotting murder, but now... Oh, they're like, what are you listening to? No, get this out of my house. This is terrible. I'm like, it's Christian. No way. Like, sure. Now, I was much younger and I couldn't quite explain the fact that, hey, just because it doesn't mention Jesus doesn't mean it's not okay to listen to. But hey, you know what? That's all right. It was just kind of hilarious. It was like, I had to actually...
You were not alone
Project
in
86.
that.
No, of course not.
We actually,
of course not.
When that album appeared in the bookstores, they put a sticker over the cover because the artwork is a guy. For those of you that have never seen it, the artwork to that album, which was released in 2004, has a guy standing on the cover and he's holding a big like knife behind his back, and there's a big hole in the middle of him, like something bad happened to him. So it's just kind of a shocking, bold image. Kind of a violent image.
It's very, very... It's awesome.
Yeah, dude.
Now, just as a side note to that, I do love the storytelling you guys have. You've always had this. Like, you've always had some level of storytelling in everything you do. Because, like, the music videos that were around that time frame kind of told a story around that. And I loved it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was like the Spy Hunter music video kind of led into like others that kind of told that story forward. You got replaced, and that's a whole thing we're not going to dig into. But it was just, I loved your storytelling. That was kind of what drew me in a little bit through that, right? But it kind of grew, right? I've always been a follower. I've always listened. I've always loved. I helped back the Knives to the Future album, things like that, right? Like,
thank you.
That gave me a perk to come see you play. The last time you played in St. Louis was at the Foo Bar on the 28th anniversary tour, right? So, I contributed. I got to come in for free. Bring a buddy of mine. It was great. I loved it. Great show. But it was like, I've always been there, right? And so when you were like, this is the end of Project 86, I'm like, I'm in. I am all in. I immediately jumped on the Patreon. I pre-ordered the ultimate big merch, but I'm like, I'm throwing down. I'm putting all my money in. So I've been there from that. And then the Patreon was cool, right? This was like when you announced the end of Project 86, that was kind of the Patreon was really starting to become a huge deal, right? Because a couple of bands that I had followed and started picking that up. And so I was all in. I'm like, this is great, because the other bands I had followed at that point that I jumped on their Patreon, it was great content. I get to really kind of hear great content from the artist and help support them at the same time. So I was excited, and it's been an amazing thing. Like, I think the Patreon community for you is probably it's probably one of the strongest Patreon communities I've seen, because it's like, it's,
thank you.
We joke about it, but it's like, it's like you've got your own cult going here.
Yeah.
Right. And I love it. It is awesome. Because it truly is it's a ride or die group, and it's a really good group at that. But it's also because the content is so good. But I feel like the Patreon community has kind of shaped this album cycle in ways that nothing else has.
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of been the driver for you to like say, hey, maybe this is not the end.
It was a big
Maybe
part
there's
of it.
more.
For sure. Yeah. You have to understand that the idea of Patreon is a very, very revolutionary one to
For sure.
someone like me who has staked his entire life on doing something that doesn't really pay the bills. Right? And again, this is decades worth of anxiety and difficulty surrounding this topic. When you play music for a living, if you want it to be on a professional level, it requires a tremendous amount of time and energy. It's really difficult to do it in any sort of pro way without it being your full-time focus. Very difficult. So you do a tour, you put out an album, and there's an influx of revenue that you can support yourself with for a season. But it's only for a season. And then there are inevitable dry seasons because you can't just pummel everyone with new music all the time and tour dates all the time unless you're at a certain level. You have to give it space. And also from a creative standpoint, you get burned out. You get burned out on touring as well and playing shows and such. Definitely you do. So you're always chasing the next, source of revenue while still simultaneously burning yourself out. And you're never really making the ends meet. So over time, most bands are just going further and further slowly into debt. Not everyone, but most of them, especially if they don't have a secondary source of income as individuals or collectively. I mean, that's been the case for me for a very long time. Now it ramped up at certain phases, but solving that riddle has always been a very difficult one. So when a friend of mine suggested Patreon to me 5 or 6 years ago, and I started with another endeavor, a different podcast that I was doing, just having that steady stream of subscriptions each month was a completely different experience. Now I've had sources of income along the way that were dependable, but not in the permanent full-time job sense, right? So there's been various seasons, you release a book or, there's been a lot of different things I've done over the years to sort of supplement things. But in general, I've never really had a consistent revenue from anything that I do that I can depend on. So the concept of Patreon was really appealing to me. And the relief that brings, again, relief is a theme here, translates into me having a ton of thankfulness and energy and output to devote. So others in the music industry and beyond have approached me about, dude, I see what you're doing on Patreon. Like, teach me how to do that. And I have attempted to, and some friends have had a fair amount of success with it, but others have come back to me and said, well, mine hasn't done as well as yours. What's the secret? And I say, I'm just obsessed with doing it because it's such a big part of my life now in every way. It's not a full-time income, but it certainly puts me over the hump each month to where at least I can make a chunk, I can pay a good chunk of my bills with it. Right. And it's circular, it's transactional. But what I really tell people is the key sauce, the key ingredient, right? The secret sauce is when you're a part of this Patreon, I'm not looking to you as flies on the wall. I'm looking to you as collaborators. And I don't think other artists offer that to their audience.
No, I don't think so either.
I think that's what makes it special. You're not only getting the inside first scoop on things, so much so that I've had a lot of people troll. Well, they'll pay the $10 and then run off to the whatever Facebook group or Reddit or whatever and announce Schwab said this. A lot of times without proper context.
Right.
Right? So the collaborative element is the thing that is transactional. Getting back to that word. Not only do all of you who participate in that obtain the opportunity to be a part of the creative process, but I also get really important feedback on the things that I make. And a lot of times that feedback is directly applied. You know what I'm saying? So I post a demo and I say, all right, need real feedback, not just I like it, I don't like it. What are the reasons why you like it or don't like it? So that I can understand your perspective as a consumer, as a fan, as a person who supports this thing. Will you apply that idea to every single thing that I work on, including the podcast and the Patreon itself? So you really are, especially if you're one of the higher tiers, an executive producer / co-producer, collaborator with everything that I do, you know, and that's what's being offered, I think, in this community, again, that's unique as compared to others. I'm not on anyone else's Patreon, so I don't know, but I would assume that that's a little bit different.
It is.
Yeah.
No, by far it is. I love the collaborative nature of that, because even as I'm a low tier subscriber because life, but like even at a $10 level, of course. No, look, even at that low level, like the collaborative nature, it is a community as a whole. I feel the feedback, and I feel like you want to hear from me, right? You do such a great job of driving people to want to be engaged.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the conversations about like, hey, let's rate, like if you're gonna go out and do like your what was it, the UFC walk up song, like what's your Project 86 song you would use for that? Man, I tell you, it's just fun. It's not necessarily like, hey, this is what I'm doing for the next. No, just like it's just a fun conversation, and it was really interesting to hear you go through that, and it's also great engagement, right? So it's a great two-way street, very transactional, exactly like you said, and I love it. It's good content. Like I said, it's one of my favorite Patreons.
Well,
for that
and
reason.
Thank you again, dude. The thing that you guys probably are not consciously aware of is that even the fun interaction is data for me, and it's good data. It's not the kind of data like Facebook is stealing from you. It's data that helps me understand the heart of the people, the taste of the people that support me and that consume this music and everything else, right? And that support the band. So when I'm always trying to think of how can I check all of these boxes, drive engagement, get people talking, give them something fun to interact with, and learn how to better do what I do. So a lot of times what people are perceiving as just, oh, I didn't have anything else to post. Oh, another poll about what's your favorite Project 86 song. No, this one has a different angle because I'm thinking about these things that you don't know about, that are going to be applied when I sit down to write more music, or, asking lyrical questions. Like it's not easy to get people to respond in the way that I want them to. So I have to keep asking these questions that are similar questions, but from different angles. You know what I mean? Because somewhere in there, I'll touch a nerve that gets a person to really be connected with their own heart and say, oh no, yeah, this is why I like this lyric so much. It's because I was going through this thing at that time, at this stage of my life, and this really spoke to that. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. We're getting past that rocks. That's a great riff. We're getting into the nuts and bolts of how this stuff is engineered, so I can reverse engineer, so I can put myself in a position to speak to that thing, always through the lens of where my heart is at as well. You know what I mean? There's never I always talk about this. You can't telegraph a hit record or a hit song. It has to come from an honest place. So that's what I'm constantly evaluating is that overlap of my heart and other people's hearts.
No,
But
I love it.
Yeah, and I usually stand by the fact that if I like it, other people are going to like it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So no, it's good, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of can feel that a little bit, and this comes from just like some of the stuff I've done with podcasting and working with bands. So I can kind of like, okay, you're looking for some, you're like, it's good, I love it. It's fueling your creative process even through some of the fun questions, and I love that. I want to respect your time. I don't want to keep it too much longer, so we're going to kind of wrap up here in a second. But as promised, as always, this has been fun. We're going to keep going with it. I want to turn around. I want you to ask me a question. All right, This is it. Any question you want, no holds barred. I got to answer it. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not going to try to weasel out of it and fit the amendment the situation. No, I'm just kidding. But all yours.
Okay, here's the scenario.
Okay.
I didn't premeditate this. I just thought of this right now. Might be kind of cliche, but this is a really good one. And every time I've done this exercise with myself, there's always some really good things that come out of it. Okay, here's the scenario. You are in high school. Okay, let's say your junior year of high school. You're 16 years old, and you are a student at the same school that you went to. Okay, but you're not you. Okay. You are future you, and you see 16-year-old you in the quad. What would you say to that person as a time traveler if you had one thing to say to them?
Focus.
Okay, why?
Okay, so I that just comes from for me, I struggle with I have got a very busy ADHD mind, and so it's really hard for me to focus and accomplish something. And if I always feel like that if I would have kind of learned how to focus better earlier, I feel like I would have actually have accomplished more sooner.
Okay, now 16-year-old you is going to be confused when you say that. So how would you explain in practical terms what that means or how to go about focusing?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing with that really comes down to learn how to for me, it's I had to figure out what it looks like to engage my mind so I can focus, right? Because I can't just sit there and lock in on something. I have to do something with that, right? I've got things to fidget with and do things like that. So to me, it's you explain, I understand that focusing is hard. You can't sit there and listen to somebody have a conversation and teach me something verbally for an hour. How about this? Figure out something to fidget with and keep your mind busy so you can actually lock in on what's being said and process that information and why that's so important, and make sure you're retaining some really good knowledge, right? And how that can really have a big impact on the future. And if you want to play the butterfly effect, not go within the details of what that could change, but just how important that is to be able to lock in and retain information being given.
Got you.
No, good question. Man, that is interesting.
Do you want me to do it?
Sure, let's go.
Okay. I know what I would say.
Okay.
Don't be afraid.
Ooh.
Don't compromise who you are because of fear. Stick to your guns. Be confident in who you are and who you were made to be. And don't let anyone sway you from that.
I love that.
I would have had a different trajectory had I done that.
No,
I don't regret it. I don't regret anything. But again, you're catching me at a really good time here because I'm reflecting on all this as I'm working on this autobiography. So yeah, that would be my message.
No, I love it. I absolutely love it. Which I guess that's the thing, right? Then now I'm going to flip this, right? Because I always end with this. Again, trying to respect everybody's time here, but I want to end with this because it's always the most important piece in my mind, because we have a voice, right? And we have a platform. It doesn't matter how many people are listening. It could be 2, it could be 150,000. I don't really care the number, but we have a voice that people are listening to right now. And I always want to take the opportunity before we leave and lose that attention of Is there something on your heart, your mind, something that's pressing on you that says, hey, this is really important. You need to know this and know why this matters? Is there just that message of like, this is important?
Yeah, and this, I'm really going to put myself out here in the danger zone with saying this, but I feel like I need to, and I would encourage people to not hear, um, don't hear what I'm not saying, basically, as contradictory as that sounds. We are in a very unprecedented season in terms of the trajectory of the world right now. And there is a lot of messaging out there that is meant to sway us, distract us, manipulate us, and condition us. Okay. I'm speaking in terms of the emerging narrative, whatever that looks like to you, right? Manifested on social media and legacy media, entertainment, and all of it. There's an emerging narrative that's been coming to the forefront, I'd say, over the last decade, increasingly so. And most people fall, I would say a slight majority of people fall on the alignment with that narrative right now. And more we're seeing those that challenge that existing narrative are being maligned, right? What I am seeing is that more than where you fall in the political sense or in the ideological sense or in the worldview sense at this moment, what is required of us right now, if we are to cut through the conditioning and the coding and the propaganda, is we have to learn to think critically about each and every message we're receiving. And most times, what I'm finding is that the things that are being branded and the people that are being branded as conspiracy theory or theorists are actually telling the truth. So, whatever that means for you in terms of where you, what you choose to believe with the data that you're being given, the pieces of information, the content that you're consuming each day, there is a reason why the people in power are saying the things that they are saying. And there is a reason why other people who are trying to gain power are saying the things that they are saying. There is truth inside of all of that, but you have to be willing to do the work mentally to be able to sift through it. Now, all of that might be vague. You know, it might sound very vague. It's interesting. When I was younger, and I'm going to wrap this up quickly. When I was younger, and again, this is a part of the book that I'm writing. By the way, shameless plug. The book one is called Omni. That's the novel. You can go to project86.com and pre-order that on audio and print book. I'll also be making an ebook version available later on. The second book, the autobiography, is called I Need Truth. Again, available at the same location. And if you're interested in checking out the Patreon community, there's also a link there at project86.com as well. Spoken like a true salesman, right?
Good.
The point that I was making is this. When I was younger, I mentioned Truthless Heroes and 9/11 and all of that stuff. I remember at the time, it was very unpopular among our core fan base to challenge the existing narrative. After all, there was a tragedy that had just occurred with 9/11. All these thousands of people, American citizens, had died. And so if you were to say anything that sort of challenged the status quo and the existing narrative at the time, you were kind of branded as a bad person. You know what I mean? Well, fast forward 20 years, and yesterday was 9/11 as of this recording. And the prevalence of, quote, conspiracy theories out there is pretty overwhelming. It's almost like the mainstream narrative now is the conspiracy take, the take that the media and the government and the powers that be at the time were trying to squash. I see so many parallels to COVID and post-COVID America in that lesson, in that story. And so what's emerged from the COVID narrative or the COVID situation is a prevailing world narrative, not just about the virus or how to treat it, but also the hurting of society, the the polarization of society in lieu of where you stood on such things. And that trickles down in the political realm as well. What am I saying without saying it? Well, if you're not supporting a certain candidate or candidates or a certain narrative, then you are labeled a certain other thing that's very negative. It's the same. It's the same because the people in charge who have the media as their the extension of their brains, so to speak, are wanting you to believe certain things right now. And you're seeing the rise of censorship and surveillance like never before right now in this time that we're living in. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not coming to anyone saying, Kamala Harris is this and Donald Trump is that. You know what I mean? It's not that black and white. You know what I mean? What I will say is the system that represents those in power right now has an agenda, and it is a global agenda, and it very much aligns with a lot of the things that concern me about the future of our civilization. Let's just put it that way. And it's not simple. It's not just good guys and bad guys. It's larger than that. It is bigger than that. It's a more global, historic view of where humanity is headed that I'm suggesting is very concerning. Now, why do I talk about all this? Well, we're in an election season, and I think we should be informed about such things when we make decisions about what types of candidates we support. There are no, in my opinion, great people out there. Black and white great people, but I think there's one system of thought and there's another system of thought. And I think one system of thought is quite a bit more dangerous at this moment than another. And so I'm just suggesting that people be good critical thinkers heading into a season where we each are given a limited voice to hopefully make an impact in the trajectory of society moving forward.
Yeah. No, I love it. It's true. I mean, I've got nothing to add to that. And I absolutely agree with that. I don't stand on one side or the other as verbally or publicly because of that, right or wrong. Like
I try
really
not
matter.
to as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will say this just to like show my cards. I'm always on the side that questions the prevailing narrative. When I bring up the 9/11 thing, I was very supportive of like non-Republican establishment media sources because I felt like we were being fed one story, and now I feel like it's flipped. It's the other side that's sort of controlling the media narrative. And so I'm naturally going to question it and flip to the other side. And I feel like that's what we're supposed to do as people in a free society is you always question the people that are in power, So
no. Yeah. Good. I love it. Well, you've done a great job of like directing us to where to go follow and find and support these things. So I don't think we need to go back and do that again other than just project86.com.
Yeah, dude. Go there. Check it out. If anything I've said resonates, please support.
Please do. It's good stuff. Even if you're a fan and you're not doing this, shame on you. Just saying. Hey, I'll say it.
We need it, though.
You're missing out.
We always need it.
You're missing out on good stuff. So, anyways, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate your time.
Love you, Andrew.
Love you too, Andrew. Look, it's been great. We'll be back. Until next time, here comes the theme music. Thank you to Mac for letting us use your song, Won't He Do It? Go check us out on Facebook and other great social medias and anywhere you listen to podcasts at Where Were We Again Media. Thank you. Bye, guys.